Hey, today I'm talking about 3 Drew Barrymore 90s romance films. And the names of those 3 movies are Wishful Thinking, The Wedding Singer, and Never Been Kissed. First up is Wishful Thinking. This is a 1997 film, and I went into it thinking that it was a rom-com, because look at that poster. That looks like a rom-com, right? Starring Drew Barrymore and heavily featuring Jon Stewart. It is not that. The marketing at Miramax, they didn't know how to market this movie, which is fair because it is very unique. But you made a lot of people angry with making them think that this is a rom-com, because it's not. It's sad. This poster is more indicative of what the film actually is. It feels like it was written as an autobiographical story of a young film nerd trying to cope with a breakup that they had. Because that's, in a sense, what the film is. It's told from 3 different perspectives, broken up by different chapters. You see the same events play out differently. This film feels very, very 90s in a lot of the good ways, with that being one of the aspects, very Pulp Fiction-y. And the beginning that has a fun meet cute and the montage of their romance. But then an event happens and this couple just starts struggling, and then it just kind of snowballs down into a mess. And it's really good. It works really, really well. I believe the romance 100%. And then how things just spiral out of control also feels so realistic. Of just people getting hung up on this one thing and obsessing over this one thing, and they just can't let it go, even though they need to let it go because that's poisoning the relationship. But then it's also people being not on the same page in a relationship and needing to acknowledge when that is too much of a difference. It also features Drew Barrymore trying to manipulate the situation. Her storyline, I cared for it the least, but it was still an interesting perspective, and it kind of helps give perspective into why he was spiraling so much, because she was fueling the fire. The main guy is a bit unlikable, but I was still able to feel for him despite that. And he wasn't always the strongest actor, but again, I kind of didn't mind because I was still just wrapped up in the story and what was going on. So yeah, all of its flaws that it had, I felt were very, very minor. So yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie and would totally recommend it. Just go into it with the right mindset. Drew Barrymore is not the lead of this film. In fact, for the first third of it, she's a minor character. She gets more attention later in the film, but she's barely in it in the beginning, which makes sense story-wise. And it's also not a rom-com. There's funny moments, sure, and there's romance, definitely, but it's way more of a drama and it's way more sad. Make sure you go into this with the right expectations, and you should have a really good time. Next up is The Wedding Singer. This is a 1998 Adam Sandler film that I have seen before, but it's been at least 17 years. The basic premise is there is this wedding singer who's in love with love, but then he gets stood up at his wedding and then hates love after that. But then maybe Drew Barrymore is there to help him find love again. And it's pretty solid. Going into it, it was exactly what I thought it was gonna be, in that there's good romance, there's good chemistry, there's some good jokes, there's also a lot of stuff that's dated and problematic, but on the whole, it's still a positive experience. I mean, the story in and of itself I really like, because it's about getting married for the right reasons, because Adam Sandler's character is in love with the idea of getting married. He's not in love with his partner, and his partner handled things poorly, but was able to recognize that fact and do something about it, so that was great. His whole thing is about pushing away the idea of getting married for the sake of getting married and just falling in love in and of itself. And then Drew Barrymore's situation's more she's just in a relationship that's just kind of been coasting for a long time, and maybe he's kind of scummy, but she doesn't recognize it because they're just kind of coasting and going with it. And so, recognizing when do we need to hit the brakes on this relationship. And yeah, no, I loved the story. It had a great, great ending. The song at the end was fantastic. I had a feeling it was, and I was so glad I still enjoyed that moment. There weren't as many jokes in this as I thought there were gonna be, or it could be that I just didn't recognize the jokes, something like that. There were definitely a lot of jokes that weren't my taste, but it was fine. I was also surprised I didn't remember that this is an 80s nostalgia film, which is also just so weird because this came out in 1998. The 80s were 9 years ago. Why are you so nostalgic for it? And it's nostalgic for it hard. That's not necessarily a criticism, though I'm not huge into nostalgia films, and I'm not huge into specifically 80s nostalgia, but whatever. I do want to give this movie credit though, because they have a trans character in this movie and they don't acknowledge it, and for the most part, they don't make make fun of them for their transness. Most of the jokes related to this character have to do with the fact that they just sing one song repeatedly, and that's it. Like, they even have a nice moment where they get to wear a wedding dress and everyone applauds, and I'm like, oh, that was a genuine sweet moment about a trans person. That's cool. So yeah, good job, Adam Sandler in 1998. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed myself with this movie, and I would recommend it, though a little cautiously, just because, again, there are some dated and problematic things in it, but I don't think it's enough to really dissuade someone from watching it. It's just something to be mindful going in. It's not the cleanest film, but it is still a good, enjoyable experience with a very nice ending. And lastly is Never Been Kissed. This is a 1999 film that's so strange. Drew Barrymore plays this young copywriter at the Chicago Times, and she really wants to be a reporter, so she gets put on an undercover assignment where she has to go back to high school and just come up with a story while there. I like this movie. There's charm to it. It's cute. The performances aren't bad. There's lots of fun moments, but also there is a lot of adults hitting on teenagers, and it's gross. And like, they acknowledge it at one point. It's just briefly mentioned and then quickly brushed off. Like, yeah, there's a hot teacher who's into Drew Barrymore, and like, they're both adults, but he doesn't know that. And so often throughout the film, he says things that are just wildly inappropriate for the situation. And she encourages it because she knows she's an adult, but it's like, no, this is really bad. This should not be happening. Stop. Ugh. Also, the end is just kind of weird. It's like a kiss in front of a crowd of people, and it's like, what is happening? It is like a cinematic end, but I don't think it makes sense within the context of the rest of the film. I do like the idea of the title and what that whole premise is, and that is that she has been kissed before, but she's never been like truly kissed, where like the kiss is a moment of ecstasy where like the rest of the world fades away and it's just the two people there in this moment of passion. Because I think that's a beautiful idea, but I don't think the film they constructed around that works. It was still fine though. I like this movie. It was entertaining, it was interesting, it was a fun look back at the 90s, but man, does it have its issues. Would I recommend this? Really just as like a nostalgia trip, like if you watched it a lot back in like high school or something, yeah, give it a watch again. If you've never seen it before, you don't need to watch it. It's okay. Like, it's cute, but there's much better rom-coms out there. So yeah, no, don't. Alrighty, now for today's rankings. First up, we got Wishful Thinking sitting at number 29 in the really like section. And then after that, a seemingly long ways down, but actually not that long down, is The Wedding Singer sitting at number 72 in the quite like section. And then bringing up the rear is Never Been Kissed sitting at number 91 in the liked section. And this is out of a total of 123 old movies so far this year.